It's Wednesday, and you know what that means. We're back live on the Big Mountain.
Hey, great to have you back here on the mountain. We already got our chat. It has started strong. JEH, Squeeze Money, Steven, Genetics. Did I miss anybody? Maybe a few others. Welcome to the mountains. Great to have you guys back. We're really excited. I think every week we grow a little bit more. We appreciate Genetics since he's on. Appreciate him joining us last week. Had a lot of viewers for that. A lot of opinions one way or another. And, we like respectful discussions, but we don't need attacks. But anyway, we say that enough. Appreciate him being back on as well. We got Minnesota Seminoles is on. He says hello. Well, hello to you too, Mr. Seminole. You know we do a lot of ACC lawsuit information here on the Big Mountain. If you have questions for us, please put them in the chat. We don't really have any Seminole discussions lined up for tonight, but we always love to talk with the chat on all of this stuff as we go along. But we are going to start hot and heavy here, Steve, with the Mountain West. We did a pretty kind of a Big Ten-centric episode, thanks to Genetics last time, kind of the expansion piece on that. I had to pass on my Air Force information. It upset our buddy Lonnie. He was waiting for the Air Force, and then I passed on it. So we will get to Air Force later today. But we have a very special guest. I want to get him on the phone. 2 in a row, Steve. We're having guests 2 weeks in a row.
Love it.
Oh, my goodness gracious. We're getting crazy around here. But I have Jim Anest. Let me unmute him. Or not unmute him. Put him on speaker. And, yes, we're going to talk some Wyoming football. I've got my Steamboat shirt on. Jim has been twisting my arm. He's getting me out to Wyoming this year. We were talking before we went live. I need to make my way. My first time to Laradice. I'm very excited. And I know you want to come with me. I think, if we can make it work.
We're going to do a live broadcast.
A live broadcast from Laradice, Wyoming. It would be great. But let's get into the pokes. I want to introduce everybody to Jim Anest. Hometown was Casper, Wyoming. He is a graduate of the great University of Wyoming. He is the founder of the Cowboys in Colorado because he now resides in Colorado. And he was telling us how great the weather is in Colorado. And I want to be in Colorado right now, but I'm not. But we're here to talk about Wyoming. Jim, welcome to the Big Mountain, sir.
Hey, guys. Thanks a lot, and appreciate the opportunity to spread the wisdom of Wyoming football and the iconic state we have here.
Absolutely. Beautiful state, 100%. And this is the second time we've have Jim with us. I was able to get him on last season, and we did an episode with Jim talking Wyoming football back when I was really high on that team early on. If anyone remembers, I took the over on their wins and losses, and they blew it out of the water. So we're going to see what Jim has to say about where he thinks things are going to stack up this year.
And I remember Jim being spot on with a bunch of his commentary.
100%.
I think he might have predicted some things that came to play in the Fresno game. He was very spot on with his Wyoming commentary last year. So.
Yes.
That was probably the high point, at that early part of the season was that Fresno win.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, with the injury to Harrison Whaley and then playing Air Force on the road, but gosh, we had the opportunity to win that game as well.
Yep, for sure. Well, let's talk about kind of what's transpired over the spring so far. Obviously, as anyone that follows the Mountain West at all knows, Craig Bohl retired after last season. I was a big Craig Bohl fan. Just the epitome of Wyoming football. You look at that coach, you go, yeah, he's the coach for Wyoming. And yeah, he is the coach for Wyoming. He looks just like him. What you would expect the Wyoming coach to look like. So they move up, or they advance the D coordinator, Coach Sawvell, up to be the head coach. And Craig Bohl's son, Jay, is actually promoted to now be the defensive coordinator to replace Sawvell, who was the defensive coordinator. So let's start with that, and then I want to get into some Jay Johnson talk, who's the new O coordinator. But what are your thoughts here on the new head coach? Certainly, he knows how things happen there in Wyoming, but I'd love to hear what you have to say here with the new coach.
Well, one thing, they certainly have that similar look. I mean, you put them up against a lineup wall, it'd be hard-pressed to figure out which one was which. But they certainly have a similar look. But their approach to the program is day and night different.
Yeah.
With, just the basic thing of putting the names on the back of the uniform so that the players' names are on the back. I mean, that is just something that Craig Bull would never, ever have considered. As fans, I think most of us are looking forward to being able to see their name and keep a better track of who's making the plays out there.
Sure.
And, other things that he's done as well, as far as opening up some of the practices to the fans. I was able to go up there to a couple of the practices this year where in the past that just was not going to happen. Things like, having a mannequin out there before practice so that he could display the new jerseys to the players. So he's really he's really a player's coach. Craig Bull was more like the boss, the CEO of a company, while this coach here, is definitely a player's coach. He's in the weight room with them. And I think the players, especially in this world of NIL and the portal, I think they've taken a real, liking to him. And I know that the hiring of him was greeted by all the players with real favorable results and favorable reports.
Right, and probably one of the reasons, I think there's a lot of reasons, I think Wyoming is unique regarding the whole transfer portal issues that many schools have. And I think they're unique in that regard. And I think this speaks to that, maintaining him, promoting him as the head coach, a player's coach, if you will. I think that says a lot. And I think you're seeing that at least this year in the lack of really much in the transfer portal in terms of exits.
Right. We had the players that we lost, the bulk of them we're just not going to see playing time at Laramie.
Yeah.
Of course, we lost a couple good ones, and just recently our defensive line was just loaded and stacked. And just right after the spring game, we lost, Gavin Meyer to USC. So, that hurt, but the defensive line, the defensive interior is real deep. So, obviously you always miss depth and you miss a good player like him, but the defense is going to be real strong. You have Bull as the defensive coordinator, and then you have the head coach who was the prior defensive coordinator. So I don't think the defense is going to even lose a beat at all. They're going to be a top squad in the Mountain West Conference.
Yeah, I totally agree. We have one of our good followers here with us on our chat. His name's David Jurgensen. He's a Husker fan. He wants to give a big shout out to Craig Bull, forever a Husker, he says. We also have some chats speaking to the color scheme and logo of Wyoming. I couldn't agree more. I love their color scheme and logo. And then, of course, we have Stephen bringing up the 22 Barstool Arizona Bowl between Ohio. He's an Ohio Bobcat fan. And Wyoming was an awesome game. Totally agree. That was a fantastic game.
It definitely was, yes.
I would say the color scheme.
Luckily, we were able to turn the ship on the 23 Arizona Bowl game and win in a real exciting game against Toledo.
For sure.
I was just going to say real quick, something we mentioned off air before we got started, that color scheme for Wyoming, the uniforms, the colors, the atmosphere. We got to see a quick preview of that on the EA Sports NCAA Football 25. I have it pre-ordered. I'm excited. I watched the video, and as soon as I saw Wyoming come on, they were in the first 6 seconds of the video, texting JY, wow, Wyoming's getting tons of coverage on it. It was just gorgeous seeing them come out. And what's the horses? Is it Steamboat. Seeing them come down and past the statue was just amazing, just awesome.
And we were on there at two different parts of that opening.
Yeah, they had the end zone.
We were the only group of 5 team on that intro, I believe.
Okay, I didn't know that.
I thought
if you're a Wyoming fan, that's definitely something we're telling to our buddies here in Colorado at CU and CS.
I bet you are. And
there's a huge Wyoming contingent in the Denver metro area. It's actually the 3rd largest component of the Cowboy Joe Club Booster Club.
Oh, wow.
And it's very common to be driving, and you'll see the Steamboat logo on the left side of the back of automobiles. I have two cars, and they both have them, and you'll see them all over Denver on the highways and in local streets.
Fantastic. Well, let's get to Jay Johnson. He comes in from Michigan State, so a tie to the Big Ten. That's kind of the 50% of what we talk about here on the Mountain, Big Ten and Mountain West. So Jay Johnson coming in to be the offensive coordinator. My questions to you are twofold. One, I think, is Steve's question, but I'm going to ask it for him. So first one, do you see this offense, and you alluded to this a little bit, I think, early on, but do you see this offense to be more aggressive, offensively than they have been here over the recent years? And certainly Steve was getting tired of Coach Bowles' just conservativeness, especially when it got to the kicking game. He would seem to
long field goals. Nobody loves a long field goal like Craig Bowl.
What are you thinking about this?
That long field goal, I just see that, John Hoyland, they're going to use him differently this year.
Okay.
Last year, I think we only attempted 9 times to go for it on 4th down. And at the spring game, I think we went for it on 4th down. Of course, it's a spring game. It seemed like we went for it on 4th down almost that many times. But, I can tell you this, that since 2016, which was Josh Allen's big year, we have more weapons on this team than we've had since 2016.
Wow.
So we have really what you're going to be looking at this year, Steve, is, a spread offense with, I think, a real heavy element of a power running game. It's a brand new playbook. It's a new system. It's the spread offense. You clap and you take the snap. They're going to throw the ball around a lot this year. But saying that, with the depth we have at running back, you just cannot ignore the depth we have at running back. And then you throw in a real deep wide receiver room. I mean, the wide receiver room is not experienced. We lost that experience last year. But I tell you what, we have some depth there, some size. We have, wide receivers that are in that 6'2", 6'4", 6'1" range. And the one guy that's the 5'10" could be just an amazing freak as far as what he did. I mean, at the spring game, 12 receptions, 121 yards for one receiver, Steve.
That's crazy.
So it shows you the difference where in past years in the Craig Bowl, we might have 12 receptions and 120 yards for the entire game for all the players.
Right.
So,
yeah, we're still talking.
Young man is Chris Durr, which he's a high school player, and he's a real scat back type of wide receiver.
And we're still talking about Wyoming, right, Jim? Because it's that's a joke, of course.
Yeah, isn't that something different?
Yeah, something different. I love it. I love it. Hey,
but once we talk about the running backs, you'll get that running back Wyoming feel, though.
For sure. So we have a question on the chat here. I don't have this written down, but I know it's a high number. So Genetics asks, how many starters does Wyoming have returning for this season? I think outside of receivers that you just mentioned, and we'll get to some of the players, they're returning a lot of the offense. I think all of the O-line except for Crum. Obviously, they have a new starting quarterback and some receivers. And then on the defensive side, I feel like they're returning almost other than the linebacker, Gibbs. They're returning almost the entire defense. So, do you know off the top of your head how many?
Nationally, we're in the top segment of returners.
Yeah,
so
it's a lot.
I think we're at 70% of the starters from last year are returning.
Yeah, it's huge. So let's get to the one guy that's not returning. Well, he's returning, but not as a starter. Mr. Svoboda, I am huge on him. Junior quarterback for this coming year, 6'5", 245. He's going to get his start of the season down in Arizona, which is where he's from, in the state of Arizona, on August 31st. Again, I expect big things from him. He's a big kid. From what I hear, and maybe you can speak to this, pretty big, powerful kid that can throw, run, do whatever you want him to do. This is going to be the best part of our episode for me, Jim, to hear you talk about Evan Svoboda. What do you got for us?
Well, you mean Evan Swoboda that's wearing number 17?
That'd be him.
That's a bold choice.
So, yeah, a lot of similarity with, the number 17. But, for him to take that number speaks as to his confidence as far as being a starter at Wyoming. I mean, at the spring game, he was 17 for 27 for 240 yards and a touchdown. The thing you notice about Evan Swoboda is the way the ball comes out of his hand. It is just markedly different. And, we all love Peasley from last year. What a warrior he was.
Yes.
But when you look at Evan Swoboda and the way that the ball comes out of his hand, it's a whole different game. And so, and you team him up with his roommate who, by the way, they have the identical size and weight.
I saw that.
With John Michael Gillenborg.
Yes.
I mean, he could very well become, and Wyoming has a history of great tight ends, but he could become possibly the best tight end ever to come out of Wyoming. Of course, with Jay Novacek, you have to wait and see, but this kid has a lot of real positives about him. And so you team him up with what Swoboda can do as far as tossing the ball around and with having a go-to guy like Gillenborg.
Yeah.
I think the Wyoming offense is really going to be multi-dimensional.
I totally agree. I appreciate you kind of parlaying that into Gillenborg. I saw the numbers there, exactly identical. We're talking about, for those that don't know, the tight end, the starting tight end and starting quarterback for the Wyoming Cowboys here, both 6'5", 245 pounds.
Big boys.
For as much as I'm expecting out of Swoboda, I am equally expecting as much out of Gillenborg. I know he's highly rated in some of those. Is it PPF or PFF or whatever the heck that is? Very highly rated tight end. I'm anxious for him. Let's get to the receivers before we get to the running back, since we're talking about throwing the ball around. So as you said, we graduate Wieland, who was I was just a huge fan of Wieland. He was there for, it seemed like forever, but I loved him. Asante obviously is gone. Marquez is gone. Bring in Brown, Bodie, and several others. How are you feeling? You talked a little bit about the receiving core. How are you feeling about them this year?
Well, I'm really positive on this Chris Dewar kid. He's a freshman, and he was there early. He even went back to school to graduate.
Okay.
So, like I said, 12 receptions, 121 yards, and he was making all kinds of catches. And then I'll take it as, if you can't beat them, join them. The Texas Tech wide receiver, who is the fastest wide receiver on the Texas Tech team, and TJ King, brings some experience and obviously big time speed as well.
Yeah.
Jalen Bean, another one, a Garden City Junior College transfer, 6'4", 203. The one kid that is probably going to turn out to be one of the real go-to guys after Gillenborg will be Justin Stevenson, a kid from Texas, from Katy, Texas.
Okay.
6'1". Then obviously Alex Brown at 6'4".
Yeah.
Then you have the Wyoming kid. They call him Bighorn. Will Pellissier.
Yes.
Great speed there as well as a kid from Wyoming. And then the one kid that, Craig Bull would talk about every year is like, oh, this is the receiver that's going to have the breakout year. But, I think this might be finally his year with this kind of offense is Jalen Sargent.
Okay.
He's at 6'2". And then you have another Wyoming kid that caught he caught the winning touchdown from, Swoboda in the spring game, Caden LaFrambe from Gillette, Wyoming, 6'4", 210. So, just with some of the numbers I've given you, you can see that we got some tall receivers that can get up there and catch the ball, especially on 50-50 kind of plays. And, that's what you're going to see with a passer like Swoboda.
Yeah, and I will tell you that, we've done, this is the ending of kind of the summaries we've done for all the Mountain West teams. To me, the weakness of the top teams in the Mountain West is their secondary. It's their passing defense. So if Wyoming can exploit some of that, they've always been known, as that Craig Bull, hard-nosed, run it down your throat type of team. But, with some of these big receivers and Svoboda's arm, I think they can exploit some of these what some people would deem the top 1, 2, 3 teams in the Mountain West. I got to talk real quick about the O line here. Crum is gone. He was the main guy there. They do return everyone else, which is great. But I had mentioned to you before, that's kind of the one piece to the offense I'm slightly concerned of. That is the O line. Can you ease my concerns at all?
I can't.
Okay.
I can tell you that the starters are dang good. And we have the Iowa junior college transfer, Alex Kahn, 6'5", 310, that will be there. Rex Johnson, you're going to see a lot more playing time from him as well.
Mm-hmm.
They have depth, but it's unproven.
Yeah.
And so they're just going to have to learn, by fire. I just think that though, the depth is going to be different because of the way our offense is going to be. It's just the demands on the offensive line will be a lot different than it was with Craig Bull.
Sure.
For instance, I think you're going to see actually screen passes. I mean, that's not something I've seen from the last 10 years. Maybe I've seen 10 screen passes in 10 years.
Yeah.
And the screen pass, especially with the level running backs we have, that's going to take just a lot of pressure off of the offensive line as well. They're blocking, play after play after play. It's going to be, the wear and tear on the offensive line is just going to be a lot different.
Yeah, for sure. Good point. Well, anything with we talked a little bit about Whaley. Obviously, Sam Scott is returning as the second back here. I'm high on Whaley. I enjoyed Scott. He's a little bit more, I think, of the stocky back. Any updates on the running game before we get to the defense?
Well, you know what? I think that I love Sam Scott. I mean, ask Texas Tech about Sam Scott.
Yeah.
They have nightmares about him.
For sure.
But I think, obviously Harrison Whaley is going to be the feature back.
Mm-hmm.
But the North Carolina transfer
Yes.
is going to be right there. DJ Jones. I mean, he played defensive back last year, but he had 77 yards on 12 carries at the spring game and had a 40-yard reception as well. In fact, one play is that if I recall correctly, if he would have made just a little bit of a different turn, he would have sprung about another 40 yards on top of that.
Wow.
But DJ Jones and Harrison Whaley are spitting images of each other, much like Svoboda and Gillenberg.
Okay.
I mean, they look alike. They're cut the same. And the thing I like about both of them is that they fall forward.
Yeah.
When they get hit, they are always going forward another yard, 2 yards. So I think, those are going to be the two feature running backs, I believe. Harrison Whaley, DJ Jones, and then the kid you might not know about is Dwight McNeely, 6'2", 204, that had the ACL injury last year and didn't play. And he didn't play at the spring game either, but I see him probably as being, the third back. And then, Jamari Farrell started last year. I mean, he started that first game against Texas Tech, and so he's in the mix.
Right.
And then you have Sam Scott, obviously. So, there's, 5 running backs that could all be feature running backs for almost any team. But the top two, Harrison Whaley and DJ Jones, I think are going to be quite the tandem.
Absolutely. That's good stuff. So let's get to the defense. I'm not going to break it down other than just to talk about it. I know one of our commenters, Steven, again, he saw Wyo's defense last year and was very impressed. They return, as I said, a ton of talent here. I guess my question for you is, number one, I would think they're at least as good, if not better, than last year's defense was. I have high hopes for this side of the ball. And how are you feeling about Connor Shea?
Well, you know what? I think the linebacking group is going to be Eller and Cole DeMarzo and Shea Solanoma.
Yeah. Okay.
but obviously, Connor is, in that mix.
Yeah. Okay.
The defensive line, the defensive tackles, like I mentioned earlier, is real deep, and it's kind of a curiosity. We have two players, both named Jaden Williams.
Right.
One's with a Y and one's without a Y.
Yeah.
They're similar sizes, about 6'4", 290. One's from Texas and one's from California. So, that's going to be, tied down real nicely. And then, with defensive end, with Sebastian out there, the defense is going to be just real strong because, Savell is going to still be around, obviously. Right. He's going to be, looking and, he's familiar with what we're doing. And certainly, the young Bull, knows what we've been doing there as well. So defensively, that one I'm just real confident about that. That's not going to be an issue.
Okay.
I was kind of worried about, if anything, I had a special teams worry with our punter.
Yeah.
But they signed that kid from VMI who was a two-time All-American, Jack Galbraith from VMI.
Yep.
And he has a big leg. He was at the spring game, but he was just on the sideline. But dang, he looked like he could be right there matching up next to Swoboda and Gillenborg as far as size. A real big kid.
Yeah. So, okay. Yeah,
obviously the kicker with Hoyland is going to be real strong again.
Yeah.
And I don't think, they're going to use him a lot differently. I just don't see some of these kicks, Steve, that you witnessed last year. I just see it being a lot different. That he's going to be more of a situational type of kicker where that he's just right on when you send him out there.
If I remember correctly, I think it was the Fresno game. There was a long field goal that they missed that almost cost them a game that they should have won.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or that they did win, or they deserved to win.
Yeah.
Steve is a very big proponent of the going for it on fourth down. He loves teams that go for it.
We only did it 9 times in 2023.
Yeah.
I would bet that number might be closer to 25 times.
I was gonna say let's triple that sucker.
Yeah. I would. That's gonna be just a lot different. A lot different. So everybody's out here is obviously excited for the schedule. In fact, there's a lot of us are looking into what we can do as far as the Arizona State game with the heat and how to handle that.
Yeah.
But the big game in Laramie this year, and I'll educate you, but you probably already know about it. The big game in Laramie this year is not CSU. It's not Boise State. It's going to be BYU.
Yep.
The rivalry with BYU and the just outright hatred of that team is that stadium will be just electric for that game. So that's the game I would say. Just like Colorado would circle Nebraska in red. This game has been looked at for quite some time now. So that it'll be a sellout.
Yeah, we know now to call them BYU. We were told that they are not known as BYU, but they're known as BYU. So, hey, we have a couple quick questions if you have the minute. Our commenters have a couple questions for you. The first one says, how do you feel about Wyoming playing Oregon State and Washington State in the future? Any comments on the scheduling alliance that's going on?
Well, this is my concern, is that we bail those two schools out, and I'm afraid that the original optimism and thought that they would be joining the Mountain West, it seems to me it's slipping away each day, especially with what's going on with the ACC. So, it's a quality teams to play, but at the end result, I think those schools, we saved them, but I don't know that they're going to have much loyalty to the Mountain West Conference.
Makes total sense. Yeah, I'm anxious to see what it looks like here. I'm anxious to see those two teams play. Some of the Mountain West schools. I mean, they usually do every year anyway, through the non-conference games, but we'll see a lot more of it here, at least this fall and possibly next. So I think it's a neat thing in the short term, but I totally understand your concerns from any sort of long-term situation.
Well, for Wyoming, this has to be a season where we can't fall this year, because what's going to happen in the next 2 to 3 years, Wyoming needs to stay relevant.
Yeah.
And the only way for us to stay relevant is not by winning 6 games. We need to do what we did last year, win 9 or 10 games, win the conference, and become relevant in the Mountain West. So when this next round happens, is that Wyoming is in consideration and is part of the discussion.
Yeah.
Personally, I think that Wyoming, along with Colorado State, brings the Denver market to another conference.
Okay.
Because of the fan base we have here. And if you look at some of the national TV rankings, you'll see the power of the Wyoming viewership when we're on national TV.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, I make that through brown and gold glasses. But I also see it here. Cowboys in Colorado, we would have 80 or 90 people at Johnson's Corner, which is a big truck stop cafe, right in the shadows of Fort Collins, Colorado. And people would wonder, what are you guys all doing here? And we would just we're just here having breakfast. And they just were astonished that there were so many Wyoming people in the bedroom truck stop of the CSU Ram area.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. So one other question for you. Genetics has a question. This is a little beefy. And so just any take on, a lot going on right now with revenue sharing. Obviously, I know a lot of our viewers know what's going on with the NCAA and House potential settlement that's ongoing, potentially that there's going to be NIL happening at every school now that will be allowed. This proposed salary cap, as some people are calling it, all of that kind of stuff. And I know that this could be another 30-minute conversation with you, but at a very high level, this whole revenue sharing and everything that's going on in this space right now, how do you feel that impacts Wyoming football in a positive and an unknown way? I know I've had some communications with a couple other viewers about, Wyoming being the University of Wyoming being the only state public university in Wyoming, and there could be some good because of that, and that it's all, kind of condensed into one spot. What is your take on all this, Jim? How are you feeling about what's going on?
Well, Wyoming is a very resourceful state, and the people there are proud of the state and they're proud of the university. That pride carries down into Colorado and throughout the whole country. We have watched games all over the country when Wyoming is on the road. So there's a lot of pride here. I know that, they're a little bit behind in what they did for NIL. I do think that this new basketball coach is going to really fire up the NIL program in Laramie.
Okay.
Because he's a Wyoming guy. And I think that might have been the spark that was needed just to kind of get the NIL program going. But I do know that, for instance, at the end of June, there's a very, very high-end type of program. Actually, it's down here in Denver at the Cherry Creek Country Club, where they have it's there for donors and donor solicitation. Okay. So they're working on it. The one Wyoming program, is there. It's established now. Obviously, being a Wyoming fan, I wish none of this happened. In fact, I wish that the old WAC was still there with Arizona and Arizona State. But, things change. And so, the Wyoming legislature has always taken care of the University of Wyoming and the University of Wyoming Athletic Department. I mean, I believe we're one of the only states in the country where the state legislature matches the money that we raise here. So, for instance, the Cowboy Joe Club has one of the larger, if not the largest, membership in the Mountain West Conference. And every dollar that they raise is matched by the state of Wyoming up to, I think it's $8 million
Wow.
matched.
Okay.
So, obviously with the new energy programs and everything, that's hurt the oil industry. But Wyoming is a very rich state in resources. And some of the new discoveries they've made there with lithium, uranium, which has always been plentiful there, they're going to find a way to cover that.
Okay. Well, that's good news. I'm hoping for massive successes, and I agree with what you said a little bit ago that we've got to see some big years here in the very near future for Wyoming to, I hate to say it this way, but stay relevant, stay in the discussion. You don't want to get left behind, and that's anybody. It's not just Wyoming, but being a Wyoming fan, I definitely don't want to see anything remotely close to looking like they're getting left behind here. So with that, Jim, we went through a whole bunch. I really appreciate your time here. Anything you want to say on the way out here?
No, I just hope everybody gets out to the stadium this year to fill the war. The new stadium the refurbished West Stands will be quite the change with the seat backs and doing away with the bench type of seats.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, you guys are going to miss not having the men's prof urinal.
Oh,
You can't find them much anymore, Jim.
Penn State's got them too.
I don't know how many of those exist in the country anymore, but we still had them on the west side of War Memorial Stadium. That stadium was built in 1950, and so it's the first real modernization of that lower west stands.
Okay.
And so it's going to be really nice, and I'm looking forward to seats with a lot of leg room.
For sure. We always need that. Hey, Jim, we really appreciate your time. I am sure if you're willing, we will have you back on the mountain, probably maybe to do a preview of the season. I'd love to hear some thoughts from you. We'll do maybe a standalone Wyoming Cowboy preview and maybe get you on the call for some thoughts right before the season starts. So
yeah, let's look at that for hopefully 9 or 10 wins this year.
I love it. I'm with you. So hey, with that, we'll let.
More importantly, my sign off is BY who.
There you go. Sounds good, Jim.
Why who?
We appreciate your time, sir.
All right, bye guys.
Bye.
Thanks, Jim.
Fantastic. We gotta secure more guests. It's 2 in a row. Having some guests. People can hear us blabber all they want. And that did, got a little long, maybe a little bit. I know for those that are waiting for some Penn State lingo or some Air Force lingo, or we want to talk about some of this. But Jim is a man that has the boots on the ground. He has his ear to the whatever you want to call it out there, and he knows what's going on. Really glad we could get him on the live cast.
I would call Jim is the Duke of the Wyoming fan base.
There you have it. He's the Duke. He knows his stuff. Good guy, and we'll try to get him back on the mountain. I appreciate his time. Let's go back up here real quick. I know we tried to get all of the questions that we were seeing that you had for Jim. Appreciate all of that stuff, and we appreciate everybody. We got a lot of great commenters here. I wanted to go back up here to one.
We got Kenneth Maynor says hello from Raleigh, North Carolina.
That's right.
He's an ECU Pirates fan.
Okay. We've got there was one up here. Maybe
Seminole fan from Minnesota. He said it's great weather there and in the Minneapolis, St. Paul area.
Sir Quaxalot, what's the over/under on San Jose State winning the CFP? Yes, there's no over. You can't even get it as a bet. It's that far out there. We talked about those. Yeah, we got those. I think we got most of them, Steve. Was there any that I missed here? Oh, I did see a couple from, let me go down here. Here we go. Air Force versus Baylor will be an underrated game. Agree, that should be a really good game. Oh, Conundrum mentioned Utah State will be the surprise team this year. Beware.
I keep hearing them mentioned.
So I am going to agree with this. I mean, we're not doing our previews yet, but I'll tell you what they have going on there with the quarterbacks that they brought in, a lot of transfers. I mean, they probably have some of the most outside of probably New Mexico and San Diego State that just had a massive turnover because of coaching and stuff like that. But I agree. Last year I had Utah State and Colorado State being kind of neck and neck, and they finished basically neck and neck. This year I see one of those two programs taking a decent step forward, one of them kind of just being where they've been, and I'm going to go with Utah State. I think they make a nice jump forward this year. I don't want to get ahead of myself. We'll do previews on all of these schools, but I completely agree with you, Conundrum. Utah State is a team to watch out for in the Mountain West. That was one I wanted to make sure we got back to. I know we've got JEH as a Beaver fan. I would hope, unless the B12 comes calling, some sort of merger with the PAC and MWC happens. And then ACC is not... is too unstable. Totally agree. I don't know why anyone would want to go to the ACC right now anyway. We've been doing a whole bunch of that stuff. Appreciate you, Kendrick Cowens, most unbiased duo on YouTube. Well, we try to be. I get a little excited sometimes, Steve. I don't think it's biased. I just get worked up. Get a little crazy. We got Squeeze Money saying thank you. Wyoming deserves a larger profile. Great program. It'd be great if they had one. But I, when you're a fan of a small school like that, I kind of feel like they're mine.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not mine, but you know what I mean? They're kind of the unknown awesomeness.
Yes, and I agree with that. But also, Jim made that point. Wyoming needs to stay relevant.
They do.
We still have this changing landscape. We have no idea. I know you're hoping to keep the Mountain West intact.
Yeah.
And as most Mountain West fans are, but they need to stay relevant to the conversations, the national conversation. They got a great uniform. They got a great look, great atmosphere in their stadium. Just win some games. Keep winning. I mean, just like last year.
Yeah.
Keep doing that, and they'll stay relevant.
So you heard what he said. He's at 9 or 10 again this year.
I like it.
I took the over. We're a betting podcast at times, and I'm going to do it tonight.
Yeah.
I'm taking the over wins for Wyoming. I believe they're 6.5. Isn't that what I said the last time? I didn't look it up, but I believe they're 6.5. Right now, if it's 6.5,
way too low.
It might be 7.5. They might be 7.5. I'm still taking the over.
Yeah.
I agree with him. I like them as a 9-win team this year. So at 7.5, I am going over wins on Wyoming. I also want to point out, he mentioned the stadium upgrades there in Laramie. There's also, just announced today, stadium upgrades in Boise State. They're doing a whole end zone remodel, reconfigure, making premium seats and doing all that kind of jazz. So there's a lot of people doing stadium upgrades, and that parlays right into what you're going to talk about. And we got a We Are friend on here, too.
All right, Kenneth Maynor. We Are, also a Penn State alum. Awesome.
Yeah.
Very exciting. So I'm a Penn State homer. I'm admittedly so. I'm a season ticket holder, not an alum, but I'm a season ticket holder. One of my daughter goes to Penn State. Two of my nephews go to Penn State, and so we're a Penn State family. We're there pretty much every weekend tailgating.
Yes.
So yes, that leads into the current topic, which is the Beaver Stadium renovations. It's kind of funny because some of the things that Jim was talking about with War Memorial Stadium, same thing. With Beaver Stadium. Beaver Stadium, 64 years old. It looks, when you go there, it's huge, it's massive. It looks like a giant erector set. In the old parts of the stadium, they have the trough urinals as well. That's an experience.
That's an easy. You walk up, you get out. I mean, you don't want to spend any time in those places. You do your thing and you go get more beer.
Yeah, for sure. As a kid, when I first went in there, that was a becoming a man experience.
You don't know what you're standing next to.
Yeah, exactly. So
let's move on. I've got too many jokes rattling through my brain right now.
Okay, so I think we have the graphic up with the rendering of the new stadium. So basically, last week there was the board of trustees for Penn State did their final meeting to approve the new stadium. It's going to cost. They're saying their projections are $630 million. They're saying that that is a conservative estimate. Well, they think it'll be less than 630 million, but the approval goes up to no more than 700 million. The final debate was a little contentious. I was on the board of trustee call.
Yeah, you were texting me about all that.
Yeah, so there's a faction for those. We'll get into inside Penn State politics, but there's a faction of the old guard Joe Paterno loyalists that basically want to keep. They don't want any progress at Penn State unless it honors Joe Paterno in some way. They have a Facebook group that it's called like Joe Paterno Field at Beaver Stadium or whatever. They don't want to do anything unless they can honor Joe Paterno, because they feel like he was not honored in the right manner whenever he was basically forced out. So we did have some trustees there, Anthony Lebrano and Barry Fenchek. Now they'll tell you, and they said on this that they had questions and concerns about the cost and all this and all that, but basically they have continued to push this agenda of we're not going to do anything, we're not going to move forward with the program unless it honors Joe Paterno, and they were basically swatted down. It took a little while,
Okay.
and then. Also, not coincidentally, but just interestingly, so Jay Paterno, son of Joe Paterno, is also on the board of trustees as a alumni representative.
Okay.
And we found out breaking news on the call. There was some confidential business that was leaked. Not really leaked, but basically had to be put out there. That Jay Paterno was involved in a bid to come in and with an outside group that wanted to come in and pay for stadium renovations in return for some kind of a business deal where they could build condos in State College, kind of a public-private venture. So his business was kind of put out there, and then he decided to abstain from the vote because people were expecting him, and he wrote some editorials saying that they shouldn't move forward with these plans.
Wow,
so
okay.
There was a lot of drama, things were coming out, accusations being thrown, but in the end they approved. I think it was like 24-3, and plus maybe 3 abstentions. They approved the plan. It's going to cost no more than 700 million. Let's go through can we bring up the timeline? Okay, so we got the timeline on here. So first of all, 70 million of this was already approved months ago to go ahead and get started with this project. And that included just some fees, some architecture fees and things like that. But it also included, this is a very important part. I know Genetics and I were talking about this offline. The winterization plan, that's already in place. It's happening now. If you go through State College, you can see all the construction. Because Beaver Stadium had no hot water in most of the stadium, was not winterized at all. And, for regular season games, usually the last regular season game is Thanksgiving. That's already pushing it as far as freezing temperatures.
For sure.
And so what do we have going forward? Well, this year, the college football playoff. Penn State has a very good chance to host a home playoff game. And if they weren't able to winterize the stadium, they would not have been able to, very likely would not have been able to host. And they were already looking at alternatives, having it in Philadelphia or Pittsburgh. If they couldn't host. So that's the most important part. The 70 million that was already approved was for some design, architectural issues, and to get that winterization process so that hopefully they can host a home playoff game this year or next year. Also, in the first batch, we see the timeline, what's already started. There's been up to about $200 million in deferred maintenance.
Okay.
Just things getting the building and the structure back up to code. On top of that winterization process, just safety and kind of like industrial health concerns that need to be taken care of with the stadium. And then also prepping some of the utilities. They needed to run some new utility lines and things like that are going to in order to handle the upgrades coming forward. So those are started right now. After this season, 2024, as soon as the season is over, as we move into 2025, they're going to start the demolition process of the entire west side of the stadium. So in place, instead of building a new stadium, which could have cost up to $2 million, they are going to renovate in place. So they're tearing down the west side of the stadium, which includes the current press box, which the current press box is like if somebody took a shed and put it on like two 70-foot tall metal poles.
Yes.
And the thing like moves and shakes with the stands, and it's crazy.
I've often thought that thing looked scary from the very first time I went up there. I went, no, that doesn't look very safe.
Not at all. So they're going to tear down that entire west side.
I'm sure it is safe, but it looks
Well,
interesting.
there are a lot of safety concerns. Maybe not, to the point where it was going to be, the stadium was going to be shut down. But
Yeah.
there are as soon as they start doing things, there are safety concerns they're going to have to address in order to meet current codes.
Right.
Because of this thing was built in pieces over the years.
Yeah.
So 2025, that demolition starts, and the rebuild phase looks like they're going to use temporary bleachers in those sections.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then as we move through 2026, they're going to continue with more demolition and the rebuild phase. By that point, all the maintenance and winterization, basically by the end of 2025, all of that deferred maintenance and all the winterization should be done.
Okay.
And then in 2027, at the end of 2027, the rebuild phase 3 will be completed. So the entire west side of the stadium will be done. Now at that point, let's see here. I want to go over. They're going to be adding 15% more restrooms.
Okay.
So the total size, the capacity of the stadium is around 107,000 right now. It's actually going to decrease slightly. They want to keep it over 100,000, but it will decrease slightly. But they're going to increase restrooms 15% by 15%, which is great because when I'm there, the lines to the restrooms are crazy. They've resorted to putting porta potties on the concourses because of the issues with the restrooms.
Well, maybe they need to go more than 15% then. Good gracious.
Well, maybe, but they are decreasing the capacity and then increasing. So they're adding 15% more restrooms, 24 new elevators. There's really only one elevator that I know of, and that is used for like club seating and I think for the press box. And for everybody else, if you're handicapped and you're getting up to the top, you have to get a ride on the back of a cart to go up to the top. So they're adding 24 new elevators, 12 new escalators. And at least 4 new stair towers.
Okay.
Right now they have a lot of ramps. It's like a maze there.
Yes.
They're going to add some towers for stairs.
Okay.
They're adding one. The stadium is massive.
Yeah.
They're adding 102 new point of sale stations. So
Wow.
a 70% increase in there. So that can be food, concessions, beer, all kinds of things. 102 new sales stations, and they're adding a whole bank of suites in addition to loge seating. So basically, with that west side of the stadium, they're gonna have one whole row of press box, a new press box, and a level just for the press, so that they can add that capability. Fox Sports, NBC, CBS, they want to come in. They have to do these fancy productions.
Right.
There was nowhere to do it. They had this old rickety press box that literally was like a big shed on 2 poles. So they're going to add an entire press level, which will be good and help them, just be able to host a more modern atmosphere. Adding luxury suites, which adds revenue.
Yeah.
That's something that's very important with programs right now. And then they're also going to basically connect the concourses around the side, because right now it's like each part has its own section where you have to go up and they're not connected. So they're going to do some connecting there, and just make a better front door experience for fans.
Yeah.
Now here's the thing. So my daughter goes to Penn State, and we go up for the Penn State, parents weekends and the welcome back weekends and all of that. And I can tell you, there's always a ton of activities planned, and you have to reserve a spot for the activities. So you know what the number one thing that is the hottest ticket to get for any parents weekend or welcome back weekend?
I have no idea.
A tour of Beaver Stadium.
Oh, okay.
It is incredibly hard to get.
Oh, wow.
That's where when parents and prospective students, that's what they want to see. And that's the thing. So the both the president and the AD, they were talking about, higher education, we're having problems, we're having budgetary issues.
Right.
How can we pay for this $700 million stadium increase? Well, first of all the money is coming from Penn State athletics revenue. But secondly, that is basically the front door of Penn State. That's what people know Penn State is by Penn State football. And so when they come and they do the tours, the prospective students, that's what they see. That's the atmosphere. It's a big selling point, which helps increase, applications, and the amount of people coming to Penn State, which is going to increase their revenue at the school as well. So it's a win-win situation. Athletics is going to pay for this themselves, but the university will also get a great benefit by just sprucing up and having a nicer front door atmosphere.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that's pretty much it. We talked about the timeline.
Some of the pictures look amazing. I mean, the renderings and stuff. Oh, yeah, of course they look amazing. They're
Yes.
freaking brand new, whatever millions, blah, 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 blah. But yeah, I mean, it looks fantastic. And to your point, I mean, it's wore out.
Yes.
It just is. And it's like a daggone Lego block
Yes.
built. I mean, it's just
People
we're gonna
say
add
erector
this,
set.
Erector set.
Yes,
Yeah, I think you said that
erector
before.
set, yeah.
We're going to add this here. We're going to stick this
Yes.
over there. And then this end zone, we're going to put
Yeah.
this floating humongous, which apparently bounces all over the damn
It does.
place,
I'm
too.
up there. I'm up
Is
the
that
top.
where you're at?
I mean,
you're just,
yeah.
thank goodness they don't play the bounce around in Penn State.
Yeah.
They had to play that in. Is that Minnesota they play that?
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin. I'm sorry.
Camp Randall
Wisconsin.
Stadium, Wisconsin.
If they did that at Penn State, they'd be bouncing down, not bouncing around.
I've been up there for some whiteouts, Ohio State, Auburn, different whiteouts, and it's amazing the way that thing bounces when the team comes out. And so a lot of that, they're going to connect. They're going to put on a better facade on the outside.
Yeah.
But most of it is making the fan experience better.
Sure.
Making it better for the fans. So that the fans are willing to pay more money, they can increase revenue. Because we talked about this house case, we talked about revenue sharing.
Yeah.
That is the thing. This is the cash cow of Penn State athletics, and they're sprucing it up.
Guess what?
What?
Chris from the Trailhead Club
Oh.
is on live.
All right.
We've been missing our buddy Chris.
That's here. Chris. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's Trailhead Club.
All right.
Every big mountain has a trailhead. He's here at LFG. Cling, cling, cling.
Let's freaking go, Chris.
So Chris, hang on, because I already gave. I think you just joined us. I just gave an over under, and I'm going to do it again. So hang on 1 second. But go ahead. You were gonna say something.
I was gonna say, Chris, where you been the last few weeks, man? We've been missing
Said
out.
he's been hiking.
Oh, okay, that's right.
You said that.
Yeah, I did say that.
And then Kenneth says renovations will open up event possibilities, outdoor hockey, maybe an Eagles-Steelers game.
Yeah, so that's
Outdoor hockey there would be awesome.
So that's a big part of the winterization process,
Yeah.
is also for the college football playoff and to have an outdoor hockey game. I believe the NHL had been in contact with them in the past about having a Flyers Penguins game, which would be huge in the state of Pennsylvania.
Oh my gosh.
You wouldn't want to go anywhere near that place for that, but that would be a huge event.
I go to Wyoming that week.
There you go. But yeah, and so they just had a country music concert there recently. I forget the guy's name. Luke Combs, I think.
Okay.
Massive. Honestly, it was almost bigger than a football game. Over 100,000 people there.
Wow.
We were up in town picking up our daughter, and there was just people everywhere.
Yeah.
Every bar, every restaurant, every hotel, every Sheets was just packed with people buying stuff, spending money. So yeah, if they can add those events, that helps the school, it helps the economy in the state college area.
Yeah.
Anything you can do to make it better and be able to host more events is great.
Real quick, Genetics, hey, thanks for joining us. We were going to get to some of your comments from last week. Apparently, they're being spread in other areas this week. But thank you very much for joining us again. You nailed it with us last week. We kind of put that out there as a second episode. Got a lot of hits on that as well. So we appreciate you coming back, Genetics. And then he also says the whiteout game is a great experience. I've never been because I don't like people.
Yeah. Well, if you don't like people, you don't want to be there.
That's why I don't want to go.
Yeah.
I'm going to
convince you to go one time.
It looks amazing.
I'm going to bring you along one time, but we're just going to kidnap you.
I'll have to bring $1,000.
A lot of beer.
That's why I need $1,000 because
Yes.
the stinking beer is going to cost like $20 a pop.
No, well, I'll bring a beer. I'll bring.
Oh, you're gonna bring it in?
multiple cases of beer. Anyways, I do want to say we love having people on. We've had some great interviews lately.
Yeah.
Doug Rohan. We had Genetics on here. We had Jim. The Duke of the Wyoming fan base.
David McKenzie.
Yeah, David McKenzie.
He's not a
was
big fan
great-
of the Knowles Peaks,
No.
but he gives a different side of things.
He definitely gets into some conflicts with Knowles, but we found out I think either as maybe an alum there, or maybe his daughter went to Florida State. He has some connections to Florida State.
He's an alum of Duke.
Yes, well, that too, but yes. I think he might have multiple degrees from different locations.
Oh, that could be. Yes, I don't know.
Anyways, we love having people on. The Genetics interview was fantastic. And I do just have to say, well, first of all, I don't like personal attacks. People can disagree in the comments or whatever, but there's no reason for personal attacks. And I have to say, there were a lot of people, a lot of commenters that came after Genetics a little bit, said, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about. We have Mr. Flugar, that's the guy you need to follow. Well, I'll just say, and I don't want to get in the middle of this feud.
we're not
between
getting in the
two
middle
them,
of it.
But I will just say it's ironic after some of those comments where almost everything that Genetics was telling us last week about Big Ten expansion, about SEC and what teams they would be interested in, and the whys. Not just making predictions. He's not trying to do a crystal ball. He's just trying to talk to people through the whys. From what I understand, Mr. Flugar and his peek around the corner, he just came out and basically said almost the exact same thing verbatim.
He corroborated it.
Yeah, he corroborated it. So what I'm saying is the two of them maybe aren't that far apart. So if you're a Genetics fan or a Flug fan, maybe you need to just take a couple breaths, take a step back, try not to get into the tribal warfare, and just listen to different viewpoints. That's what we try and do. We want to have a discussion moving forward, and we love to have different viewpoints on. So let's everybody just be nice to each other in the comments, doggone it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, guess what?
What?
Guess who else is having a renovation to their stadium?
Who's that?
Air Force.
Oh, okay.
This is like the renovation, stadium renovation episode, for Pete's sake. So we're going to get into the Falcons. Lonnie, you've been waiting. We're getting to the end of this episode. And don't worry, I'm not pushing it off. We're going to talk the Air Force Falcons right now. But their stadium renovations and modernization is going to be completed. It's a $90 million project. Not quite as much as what Penn State's doing. But it's the east side with enclosed seating, a new stadium entrance, just some upgrades overall to Falcon Stadium out there. So happy to see that as well. That's another place I really want to get to. That stadium looks amazing. Most of the Mountain West look amazing, but Falcon Stadium looks awesome.
Colorado Springs, correct?
Yes, I think that's right.
Air Force Academy, Colorado Springs.
Yes,
yeah, beautiful
Air Force
place.
Academy, yes.
Yep.
So I want to get back to, before we get into Air Force, I mentioned the YO over-under. It is 6.5, Steve.
Okay.
Here it is, Chris, and he's on. He gets to hear it verbatim.
All right.
Over Wyoming, 6.5. It's a plus 108 right now.
Okay.
Plus 108. Right there. I also took the over on Boise State at 8.5, and I looked at Utah State to get back to, I believe it was Conundrum that mentioned them. They're 5.5 right now. I'm not going to pick it, but I like them to be over as well.
I have a very important question for you.
No, I'm not betting the house.
Okay, all right.
You don't have to ask it. I know what you're going to say. I am not betting the house. That might come later in our preview
You're not ready
episodes.
to do that yet. All
this is like way out of the gate, really early. We've talked about early lines before.
Yes.
This is even before you get to early lines. This is just like they haven't even been birthed yet. They're still in the womb right now.
We're
right?
just tickling them a little
Yeah. So anyway, Chris, Trailhead Club, Wyoming, over 6.5. Pound it for plus 108. I'm going to go do it as soon as we're off this daggone episode. I haven't done it yet. Oh, no, I did do it. I did, and I'm going to do it even more.
Chris is ready for some big mountain ice cold locks.
Chris, I got to tell you, first of all, number one, it's not an ice cold lock because, again, it's still in the womb. I can't ice cold lock a baby in the womb. But what I can tell you is we have a logo getting worked up for the season for our ice cold locks. As soon as we have it, Chris gets the first sticker. We'll make some stickers, and I'm getting it to Chris, our ice cold lock lover. We're going to get him a sticker, and we're going to have our own little ice cold lock logo. I'm excited for it.
Awesome.
I'm getting it.
Do you have his email already? Or
yeah.
Okay, all right.
I got Chris's goods. So let's get into Air Force. So I talked a little bit about this last time. So Coach Troy Calhoun, head coach since 2007, just the staple head coach there, runs a very good program. In April, he actually signed an extension through 2029, so that'll take him out to being 22 years there at Air Force, assuming he stays that long. I would assume he will. 9-4 last season, and he has been 40-12 over the last 4 seasons. 40-12. That's really, really good.
Really good.
Unfortunately, Steve, they turn over almost their entire team this year. Yeah. It is unbelievable. According to ESPN's measure of returning production, the Falcons rank last in FBS. Both sides of the ball. They're not last in both sides. Overall, they're last. But on the O side, they're 130th. And on the D side, they're 134th. Is this going to be a rebuild or a reload? It's going to be a rebuild. I'm sorry, that's just way too much that you have to deal with in 1 year. Major roster overhaul. Again, a talent is there, but as you know, and we say this every time we talk about them, it's just a different athlete that they're dealing with. at not just Air Force, but all of the service academies. It's just a different type of athlete that they're dealing with. And not only that, these are now very inexperienced, different type of athletes. And I don't mean different as a knock to them. That's not what that means. But I think everybody understands what we're saying when we say that. It's, they're there in a service academy, and they're not there just to play football. There's other reasons why they're going to Air Force. So, experience, as we've seen and we've said, is king in college football. The more experience that you can gain, and we talked about how much experience Wyoming has coming back, and that was a great question. I think it was Genetics that had asked about how many returners they have, and I am going to get that number. It's a lot. It's a lot. I mean, it's probably 80% is what they're returning. That again, just complete opposite here for Air Force. They only have 5 players that are returning that started over half their games last year. Only 5 players. 2 are receivers on offense, 2 are cornerbacks on defense, and 1 is a guard. So there was a comment earlier about the running game, and I think that was Genetics about watching the running game. Their entire offensive line is gone.
Yeah.
Pretty much their quarterback, Larimer, who was fantastic when he got hurt, and we thought he was done for the season. Poof, he comes back last year, and they needed him because they were a different team without him. He's now gone, as well as most of their running backs are gone. And the one guy that could have come back at running back, John Lee Eldridge, he's actually transferring out. He was their number 2 back last year. So just a complete rebuild, not a reload. I'm sorry, I hate to say it, but a complete rebuild for Air Force. They blew their load last year, had a great season, and what were they, 9-0, I think it was? Or was it 8-0?
8-0, I think.
8-0, and then unfortunately they hit that wall, and man, they hit it really, really hard. They do bring back 2 key players in terms of extending their career with a turnback here at Air Force, a defensive end Goff, and a guard, I don't know how you say his name, Peyton Drowick, I believe is his name. And it appears that John Busha, I mentioned this last week as a teaser, John Busha is the clear leader at quarterback. He's a rising junior. He did appear in the final 2 games here last year, and he was the guy that Steve said to me, hey, there's a backup quarterback that's actually throwing the ball with Air Force. Well, guess what? Maybe they're going to be doing a little more throwing the ball this year at Air Force. We'll have to wait and see. So, yeah, that's where we're at. Unfortunately for them, they've had a couple really strong seasons there. With the Falcons, just a bit of they just have a lot of inexperience, a lot of turnover, and you'll have that. So
yeah, so last year before the season even started, I brought up the new rules that the NCAA instituted, really basically banning cut blocking or I mean, if it didn't outright ban it, basically made it a lot harder to do legally.
Sure.
It made it less effective, and I wondered how that would affect the service academies.
Yeah.
I think Air Force last year was the one service academy that didn't seem to really affect as much.
Right.
However, big part of that was that they had a dynamic quarterback. They had so much experience.
Yes.
So we'll see this year in year 2 if that's more of a thing. But then also, I wonder going forward if that's really been the way the service academies have been able to compete, is that the option, the cut blocking is a huge part of that, option offense. I wonder, with a better thrower, do we see a little bit of a transition this year for Air Force? Can they catch some people by surprise?
True.
And maybe we see, that was their advantage. They came up with a schematic advantage because their guys are just smaller in general. Was that the cut blocking as part of an option running game? Maybe we see a total transition. Maybe this rule change, and maybe Air Force will be on the leading edge of that. Maybe we'll see them move towards more of a passing game, or like a run-pass option instead of just run, whether it's quarterback, whatever.
Right.
More of a run-pass option where they can catch the defense off guard. So I'm really interested to see how Air Force will do. And I mean, they have that system down. They can, if they can still be competitive. They can go back to the well. I think even with all these new players, they can be competitive with that system. But do they try and take the next step and maybe evolve a little bit due to some of those rule changes?
Well, and they actually have them right now at 6.5 for Air Force. Remember, that was a 9-win team last year. So pretty good drop here in Vegas, going down to 6.5. I haven't looked at that in the preview. That's a decent line. It may actually be high. When you have this much inexperience, I I get very concerned about, especially an undersized, inexperienced turnover like this. I'm very concerned about that. I think some of that might be inflated because of how good they've been the past couple years. You know, you were on the fact that Purdue was overrated last year, and you rode that sucker to some nice wins. We may have to, unfortunately, ride Air Force's getting kind of beat up here a little bit, at least in the early goings until that gets figured out.
Well, I think the 6.5 line kind of seems fair. I mean,
it's fair. I agree. It's fair. But I think it might be high.
Yeah.
But anyway, hey, we've got Bo on. He's one of our Clemson fans, as you heard last week from Genetics, and you've heard more this week from other individuals. You know, more smoke around Clemson to the big, possibly, if they can get out of the ACC.
So, Bo, tell me if I'm doing this right. I've had some guidance. I've had some training. And so now I say Clemson.
You just put the P in there.
That's right. I'm putting the P in there. Clemson.
But you're really okay. I feel like you're getting ready.
Because I'm trying to do that southern drawl. Okay. Clemson. Trying to add that P.
I didn't know that's what you were doing. Yeah. I thought you were trying to clear your throat while you said it. Clemson. Anyway, we struggle up here in the Northeast.
Yeah, we're Yankees. We say some
Yankees. Funny things. Stephen Vitt has the good old ice cold lock going on the emojis. Well done out there. Kenneth says Army's going to have a challenging season in the AAC for their first season. I totally agree with you. I think they are going to have a challenging season. AAC is a fantastic conference. Have some very strong teams. So I might just see how they'll do, though. But, yeah, I agree. They're going to challenge a little bit. Stephen also says the 3 service academies will have to adjust their offense and strategies a bit, be more like 70-30 run pass instead of 90-10 run pass. Well, Air Force was
97-3.
I was going to say 90-10 is being generous. But we get your point, Stephen, for sure. So anything else here, Steve?
No, I'm trying to remember his name. The big Air Force news, they had that wrestler, the heavyweight wrestler.
Oh, gosh.
I
don't remember
his name. They're heavyweight wrestler. So if people don't know, the service academies, they can't take a 5th or 6th year red shirt, and which I think that really hurts. That's why.
Yeah, right.
Why
I can't keep some of those.
You can't keep some of those guys.
Yeah.
But Air Force had a really good wrestler, and I meant to write his name down. He competed for the national title the last few years. He was in semifinals and finals. He's going to Oklahoma State.
Is that right? Okay.
The Air Force is allowing him to go basically take a redshirt year at Oklahoma State before he does his service commitment, which I think is great.
Yeah, it is great.
I remember David Robinson back in the day. You know, Naval Academy was a star, and he was able to work different things out with the Navy, where he did some reserve service, whatever, so he could play in the NBA. But anyways, and we'll try. If I can remember his name, I'll put it in the chat.
Okay.
But great wrestler for Air Force, transferring to Oklahoma State to finish out his last bit of eligibility, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah.
And doing things like that, I think, help the service academies draw those big time athletes, because if they know they have an opportunity to use all their eligibility, I think it's great.
Right, for sure. All right, well, with that, we are about a little over an hour again, and having another good conversation. Yeah. So, hey, we want to again thank Jim for being on with us. We want to thank all of our commenters. Had a very healthy chat going on this evening, especially during Jim's interview. I think our viewers seem to really enjoy that. Got some great questions from you guys to ask him. We really do appreciate that. Good to have some of our regulars on as well. It's always good to see some of these names out there, our mountain dwellers, as we call them, our good old standbys, and some of our new people, Bo, Kenneth, good to have you on here as well. With that, hey, we thank you guys for watching. We're going to try to keep doing these every week as much as we possibly can. June, I feel like slowing down a little bit, but every time I say that, it's like we get a whole bunch of episodes we're going to do. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. I will say, we are trying to get another special guest, Mitt Winter, with Winter Sports Law, to talk some of this NIL, talk some of the settlement issues going on with the House and NCAA. Unfortunately, he had to cancel with us. We were going to do that over the weekend. Had some personal stuff going on, so we're going to try to get an interview with him, maybe get that posted next week. And, of course, we always have good stuff. We have a packed episode coming out tomorrow because we like to stay on the Beavs and the Cougs. We have some good fans up there that we Squeeze Money being one of them. Squeeze Money's on here. So, yeah, hey, we thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time on the Big Mountain.